How do you truly break through? How do you stop yo-yo dieting? How do you stop relapsing, going back to old habits that don't serve you? How do you truly break through in a way that sustains, that stands the test of time? This is obviously a question that we all ask ourselves, and I think there's going to be many different answers to this question. And I can give you my perspective from someone who has come from a life of a lot of challenges, a lot of mental health challenges, a lot of addiction, a lot of addictive tendencies. How have I been able to get through a lot of those things and come out the other side and feel dramatically better for it? Because I see a lot of people out there and they really struggle with habits. They struggle with their routines. It's obvious to me because their body is not in shape. You know, one of the things that I've often said, and this might be a controversial statement to some people, but to others it's just going to be common sense, is that if your physical body is not healthy, like if you're overweight, if you're not healthy and you have extra body fat, it's a sign that something mentally, emotionally, internally is not right. Like that physical weight is a representation of the emotional weight. Now, you can choose to deny that, ignore it, say it's just genetics, whatever. But I come from a family with people who are overweight, but I chose a different path. And the thing that I want to start this video with by saying is that if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. And so it's not in your best interest to say, well, I'm just always going to be overweight, or it was great that you were able to get off all your medications for ADHD, but I'm just ADHD. I've heard these before. People come at you. They'll literally go out of their way to defend their diagnosis, their label. And you can choose to do that, or you can choose to say, hey, you know, that's just a snapshot of where I am right now, but I can choose to be different. And when it comes to, because I look back on my own life, and I used to be a butcher before I studied nutrition and human structure and function, which is like physiology. I used to be a butcher, and I used to stay up all night drinking, partying, getting into trouble, getting into fights. I mean, my life was completely different when I was doing all these things. And I've had people that I used to be good friends with now that are either dead or have been in prison for years. And I'm talking for some of them decades. And what was it? What did I do to course correct and not go down that path? And it's interesting looking back, because, you know, hindsight is a beautiful thing. And when you look back, you can see a lot of the things that you inadvertently did that kind of help you navigate towards that new trajectory. And I was thinking, what is one of the main things, or what are like a couple of big nuggets that I found helped me a lot? And the first one was your tribe, or your social environment. And so think about it like this. If you're trying to stop drinking and you're trying to stop eating like shit because everyone around you is fat and out of shape and drunk and just useless, how hard is it going to be for you to stop doing those things if everyone around you is like that? And that's what most people do. You're constantly walking into the lion's den hoping the lion doesn't eat you. And so people will try and eat healthier, they'll try and stop drinking, but then they'll still go to their friend's house on the weekend for football and drink and tailgate and do all these things that they used to do and expect a different outcome. It's not going to happen. And one of the things you have to understand is that until the pain of remaining the same exceeds the pain of change, you're going to continue down the same path. It's only when you're like forced with no alternative, like you're like, I cannot stay in this place any longer, I cannot stay the same any longer. The pain of remaining the same is so painful that the pain of change feels easier. So the first thing that I accidentally did was when I started to go see my psychotherapist, Frank Hayes, and this was early in my journey. He suggested to me, and this is before YouTube, this is before social media, so I didn't have all these resources. And he said, hey, have you tried working out before? Because you have a lot of pent-up frustration and tension. I can see it. Maybe you should try working out. And I know it sounds obvious to you right now. Maybe it doesn't, but it's obvious to a lot of people that working out is like a pressure release valve, that it can help you feel better, blah, blah, blah. But back then, YouTube wasn't around. I'm talking like over 20 years ago. There wasn't YouTube. Social media was like in its infancy. And so I didn't know any of this stuff. And I thought, well, he's helped me so far. He's helped me like with a lot of different things. Maybe there's some truth to what he's saying with this working out stuff. I'll give it a shot, whatever. And I went to this gym in Browns Bay, Auckland, New Zealand, where I'm from originally. And called Beachside Health Club. And it was funny because it's like I started to get the bug. I started to notice that I'd go in the morning, the people in that environment were really friendly, they were healthier. Most of them were like 10, 15 years older than me. They had families, they had businesses, they were entrepreneurs. And they almost like took me under their wing. It's almost like they could see that I was this young guy like course correcting my life, and that they wanted to help me. And so they took me under their wing, and I started to just like bond with these people, and I started to enjoy training in the morning with them. And because I was training in the morning with them, I had this less and less of a desire to go out at night and drink, because I noticed that if I did that, I wouldn't be able to wake up in the morning in time to go train with them at like 7 a.m. So it was almost like just by accident, just by design, like because I enjoyed being around these people, they made me feel good, they kind of motivated me. I stopped going out as much at nighttime. I just kind of got like old to me because I started to really enjoy this new thing. And that's the key. You can't just remove an addiction or remove something and replace it with nothing and expect to truly change. Like, you have to take the thing out and replace it with something useful, something of value. Otherwise, you will relapse and go back if you don't fill in that void. And it has to be something constructive. And so I didn't realize that by accident I kind of filled that old gap with this new thing. And obviously, once you start doing that and you're waking up in the morning, you don't want to go out at night. By virtue of that, you don't drink as much. So you notice that your body starts to improve more because you're not all inflamed and drinking a bunch of empty calories and puffy face and looking all fat and disheveled. And then obviously, as you get more physical results, your desire to eat a bit healthier improves because you can see that you're spurring on even more results. And it was kind of like this self-fueling system. So if I had just tried to be healthier, go to the gym, get in shape, all those things, but still go out at nighttime and do all the goofy shit that I was doing, my chances of change would have been zero. Or very, very, very small. And so that was the first component, is that you have to look at your environment. Now, we're in a beautiful time where social media can almost engineer these digital environments. Now, some might argue it's not quite the same as like a physical tribe, and I would say yes, in many ways that's true. But if you're in like a small town, or you're in the middle of nowhere, or if you're already have a family that's maybe not very supportive and you don't know what to do, getting into masterminds, getting coaches, getting mentors, like getting into my superhuman upgrade and getting into my group, or getting mentoring from me and like being in my ecosystem, or asking me what mentorship groups I'm in, that can plant that seed and get you in those environments around people that think differently. See, that's the key, guys. You've got to get around people that think differently than the current set of people that you are around. And the other component to that, and this is obviously one that has served me, I realize that it's not as easy for everyone else, but your physical environment. So right now, shooting this, we are in Auckland, New Zealand, visiting my family here. But we live in Tennessee in the Smoky Mountains in the US. And I don't think I would have changed as much if I had stayed here. Like if I'd stayed in this physical environment, I don't think I would have changed as much. And you ask any traveler, you ask any person who's well traveled, they have a level of like awareness and insight in them that you don't get from just staying in your hometown. Now, there's nothing wrong with staying in your hometown, and there's nothing wrong with going back to your hometown if that's your calling. But what I would encourage you to do is have the courage at some point in your life to go and explore, to leave for a minute. Because I found that by going to the US and completely going there by myself to meet my wife Lauren and starting my family with her there and completely uprooting my life, I was able to almost reinvent myself. Many of you guys who have traveled or who have left a place and gone somewhere else will know exactly what I'm talking about. That idea of like reinventing yourself, where you can go to a new place and you're a blank canvas and you can essentially recreate yourself from scratch. And I think between that and then choosing to get around better social environments, those two things change the game. Obviously, there's other stuff like the quality of your diet. Like food is like software, your body, your mind's like the hardware. Movement, sun exposure, hydration, sleep. All these things are pieces of the puzzle. But none of those things will last or stick if you don't engineer a different environment. It's like trying to grow a fruit tree in concrete. You can have the best fruit tree in the world. It can come from the best like grower. But if you put it in clay and don't water it, it's not going to grow. The same thing is true for like your nutritional, like your health goals. You have to get in a different environment that's nourishing your soul. Now, some people might say, "Oh, well, that's too hard. Like I've tried, I don't have anyone around me." Part of it is like you have to think about becoming more of that person you want to attract. Like attracts like. And so if you want to attract more ambitious people, more hungry go-getters, more positive people, you need to start becoming one. And so that's why following people on social media and engineering these environments on social media can be so useful, because you can essentially then start to learn how they think and operate and behave, model that, become that. So that's the message for you today, is that I think your social environment and your physical location play such a massive role in your overall transformation and well-being. I know it was like that for me. Coming from New Zealand, living in the US now, I can see how different I am because of those choices. And they weren't intentional at first, but hindsight, it's that beautiful thing. So I wanted to share that with you today, because very often we wonder what's the missing piece. And in my experience and opinion, for most people, these are two missing pieces.